Okay, it's 6 o'clock. Let's go ahead and get started. Looks like we've got everybody here. I'll call this work session to order. It's November the 30th, 2021. City of Manatee Springs City Council meeting work session. Start the roll call. Councilman Shea. Johnson.
Present.
Mayor Pro Tem.
Present.
Councilor Wolf.
Here.
Councilor Bremner. And the mayor is also present, so we got a full house. Okay. Right, so we have one item on the work session tonight. That's a discussion of the 2022 budget. And then later we will have two executive sessions. We'll have to go into a special meeting and then go into special session mode for that, for those two items. Okay, so with that, we can go ahead and kick off the budget discussion. We've spent a fair amount of time on this previously, and I guess to start off with, Becca Davis, our finance director, had prepared responses to a number of questions that council had, and we had those available for our November 9th meeting. I think that was probably the essence of most of the questions. So Becca, if you want to respond to those or anything else that you've heard in the meantime, I guess this is a good time. You have the floor.
Good evening. In the November 9th work session memo, we addressed the questions that Councilor Wolf sent in an email on October 18th. Since then, she's requested costs on each of her specific projects, and I'm here to respond to those questions. So, first of all was the sidewalk at the corner of Bruxton and Pilot Knob. Preliminary costs are estimated to be $50,000 to $60,000, but first Public Works plans to implement the solution outlined in the November 9th memo, and we are investigating putting in a sidewalk in late spring or early summer. The second one was a yellow stripe along Washington Avenue. Staff needs more information on location to determine exact cost and if it's appropriate. Next was to hire someone to input data to upload all new conditional use permits on the city website. The interim planning director has accomplished this already and is updating it on a weekly basis. Next was money for our own phone number for citizens to get response after hours when city services are needed. We are asking council for direction on this due to potential issues with confusion with El Paso County Dispatch. Both the fire and police chief, along with the dispatch, need to weigh in on this matter. And if we are to add our own dispatch, the estimated cost is between $1 million to $1.5 million per year. Next was road improvements for all roads to be used by fire trucks and shuttles for the new fire training facility to be completed before construction of the building. The roads will not be repaved until after the fire training facility is constructed, but as per the November 9th memo, Mesa, Michigan, and Duncan are all on schedule for 2022. Next was funds for external company to conduct an anonymous survey of all staff for an evaluation concerning morale, working conditions, opportunities for training and promotion, etc. $25,000 is included in the 2022 budget for this. Next is Soda Springs Park was advancing renovations. Parab and the Parks Rec Director are managing the Soda Springs Parks upgrade and would need to be consulted on any changes to their schedule. Next is the funds for design and development of Higginbotham Flats. Once again, Parab manages this project, and they are moving forward as planned. Next is funds to upgrade more streets than were included for 2022. All City Council must provide direction regarding adding additional roads to the 2022 program for the current 5-year paving plan. The average cost per square yard ranges from 53 $53, excuse me, $53 to $64, depending on the inches of the asphalt. And milling and other road-based prep were all paid as separate pay items, so that cost does not include that. So this could be added into the budget early next year when we amend it. We just need to get direction from City Council concerning this. I do wish to point out that the PPRTA currently funds our paving 5-year plan. And if we spend more money than what's being provided by them, we might be cutting into other projects that would be funded through our other sales tax. So the PPRTA only pays for road improvements, and that is a wonderful source for that. Finally, funds to hire an outside firm to identify and develop a reservation system for Hiawatha Gardens parking lot and for Bar Trail parking lot. A pilot project will be implemented in 2022 and will need to be evaluated before additional changes are made in parking, and Roy will be addressing that next week, right, in December 7th. And as always, please remember, Denise and I are willing to meet with any city council member to go through the budget at your convenience, Saturdays, Sundays, evenings. And also, please remember that the budget can be amended at any time. So it's not set in stone, it's a plan, and it can be changed. And that really concludes what I have to answer on these questions. So, Mayor, I'm turning this back to you.
Okay, all right, thank you very much. I think that was helpful. We see that a number of items are already covered in the budget. We have plans to work on those items. So that's reassuring. And as you were mentioning, the PPRTA money, I guess I wouldn't want to broadcast this too loudly, but I was doing some quick math at the last meeting we had with them, and their reserves are quite strong. And if we look at our share based on population, that's about $1.4 million. Okay, that's kind of a ballpark number, but there's some reassurance in that, and I think that's worth mentioning to council that we we can rationally anticipate getting that money in the coming years. So that's a healthy source of funding there. With that, I'll open up to council. We have questions or comments? Julie?
Thank you. Thank you so much, Becca. You said about the sidewalk at the corner of Ruxton and Pilot Knob that you'll be investigating putting it in late spring. Can we just commit to putting it in, or why do we have to just use the word investigate?
Roy?
Yeah, actually talking to Mr. Jones, the plan is to put one in next year. So plan number one is possibly even next week, we're going to do a temporary solution with some striping and delineators so that they have a safe area to walk and people can see it. And then in spring or early summer to actually put in a sidewalk.
Okay, so that's for sure.
Yes, ma'am.
Okay.
Great.
Thank you, Roy.
And then can I just go down the list? Is that
Yeah,
okay?
yeah, I think that makes sense, Julie. You're on a roll. Let's go for it.
Okay. Then the yellow stripe on Washington Ave, I can't imagine it'd be that expensive, but I don't know. It's the hairpin turn where they recently put up that helpful mirror.
Okay, so it's just that turn where the mirror
That
is.
turn, because people
Okay.
make that, I go on there every day, and people make that turn. I don't know if they think it's a one-way street or, and there, I mean, I know you wrote slow with the lines in the middle, but when you're actually making the turn, especially people coming up off the highway into town, they're not going to, so that's the area I thought we should have a stripe.
And a stripe is a yellow curb, or what do you, is that what you're?
Well, yeah, it'd have to be curved, the road is curved, just
Right.
to make sure that you stay on your side of the road.
Well, I meant the yellow paint on the curb, not a yellow, I know it's a curb, but the yellow paint on the curb
Mr.
itself,
Cheney.
right?
I'm real familiar with that place, too.
Yes.
I drive it a lot. There's no curb on either side of the road, right on that
So
curb.
we can put it on the
just in the
pavement.
middle of
We're
the
talking in the
road.
middle, just to divide the highway into a right and left lane. Just-
Oh, okay, a
yeah, just
center lane.
A center yellow
center-
line is,
Okay.
I think.
Oh, that's the word I was missing.
Yes.
Center
Understood.
lane stripe.
Okay.
Yeah, because we do curb striping, we do all kinds for, for
Oh.
fire. I just want to make sure we're getting the right terminology.
Yeah, it's just a hairy
Curve, not curve.
Okay, curve, okay,
Curve.
curve and
I
curve.
thought you said curb, too. There are no curbs up there.
okay.
And I would guess that the distance is no more than 200 yards.
Okay, so you want a center lane so that it divides it in the turn.
That'd be
We can do that fairly easy, so we'll,
Oh,
okay?
that'd be so good.
Yes.
Okay, oh yeah, and I did hear last time that the planning director is taking care of inputting all the new conditional use, so that's great. Is there a way that we could move forward? I don't know if this is a budget item or if it's just a scheduling prioritizing issue, but move forward to investigate having our different system to contact non-emergency services after hours. It's just awful. It's so awful. Anyone can try it and see. And so I don't want to spend over $1 million to do it ourselves, but it seems like there should be something we can do to make it better. And I don't know what that would be that would cost less than $1 million. If we could direct staff to look into that, I think that would help the public. I don't know that it's necessarily a budget item at this time.
So the direction will be staff to look at a low-cost way to provide after-hours.
A different
contact.
way.
A different way, okay.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know if we have consensus on that, but I guess we can.
Or any, not only after hours, but just any time
Okay,
you call up. I mean, you got to go through that whole voicemail thing. It drives you.
Oh, it's awful.
You can't, it's awful.
Yeah, it makes you not want to participate in trying to help the public because it's too difficult. Yeah, I guess I don't know why I'm saying after hours. You know why I'm saying that? It's because personally, that's when I'm the one, I'm usually calling. Although I've been calling 911 more for non-emergency things because I just can't handle that phone number. Anyway, then the code enforcement, I didn't know if we went over that one, but I just was concerned about how complex the planning code is and for the pertinent portions for the code enforcement person to be familiarized with. I don't know
Right,
if anyone's taking the lead on that, or did you address that? Maybe I missed it.
I didn't bring it up this time because it wasn't particularly cost-related, but the answer before, which I thought was,
Becca, I can answer
Right.
that. So prior to that statement from you, we were already talking about how we're going to make it easier. And I've been trying to research some ideas of a chart and somehow we can follow easy path, because it's not easy currently. So we're working on trying to figure out a chart to allow for those code violations, step 1, step 2, so that we don't miss steps. So we are working on that.
Oh, at least a cheat sheet, so she knows, even if she doesn't know all the steps, if she knows that there's serious excavation going on where half the land is gone, that she would know maybe you should say something. Yeah, okay. So I guess that's not really a budget item if that's something we can handle internally. When I heard, Becca, you said that with respect to the Higginbotham Flats Park, that Parab is moving forward, but financially, is there anything other than the GOCO funds? Are we offering any city money to assist with the design and development of that park?
we have 30,000 budgeted in the 2022 budget.
And all of that is exclusively for Higginbotham or
Yes,
That was in the para brief a couple of weeks ago, that they had budgeted for that.
exclusively?
For planning, yeah, exclusively. for
I
that.
just am never sure if things are dedicated as a line item or if it's just an idea. So That's fabulous, because I know, John, you mentioned at one point that the city wouldn't even put up a garbage trash can or something.
That's right, yeah, that was a number of years ago, but yes, that's a good point, so.
Okay, I'm very happy to hear that. I'm relieved to hear that. So I do have a question about the PPRTA funds. Do we use every penny that we get from that specifically for road improvement, or do we fudge it and use some of that other that money for related things?
Nope, it is all specifically for something related to roads. So sometimes it could include sidewalks, curb and gutter, but in some way or another, it has to be related back to the roads. And they are they watch that very closely. They peruse every invoice.
And so, do we submit a request for a specific dollar amount with a proposal, or do they just simply say, here's your annual allocation, use it however you wish? You know, road related.
Road related. Well, it depends. If it's the capital money, it has to be related back to those capital projects that were in the ballot question. And they were specific capital projects that's all that capital money can be used for. So they let us know how much we have, or if there's rollover. And then the maintenance, that can be more as it comes up during the year. But we do decide, we have to turn in a budget to them at the beginning of the year. And I did forget that some of the maintenance money was spent on the Public Works building because it was related to, I forgot about that one.
To roads?
Yeah, it was
the
related to the employees who work on the roads.
Oh, that's fine. Well, everything's related to the employee, I mean, even the bathroom, so. But anyway, okay, I get it.
Also, there's some of that, as you said, for capital, like Hiawatha. This year, I think there's $350,000 for the Hiawatha, the mobility hub, and those type of things. So it really depends on which pot it comes from PPRTA, but it's very specific of what we can use it for.
Right, that was one of the capital projects, was the purchasing that property and getting some of the traffic off the roads that go into town.
So, are we able to submit a budget to them and say that we'd like to be a bit more aggressive in moving forward on our road repairs? Or are we just stuck with whatever they've already offered for 2022 and we can't afford, we'd have to use our own money?
We'd have to use our own money. We are stuck with the amount that they say is available for the city of Manitou Springs from the sales tax and what they estimate. Now, maybe towards the end of the year, they might realize that there's more money coming in than they thought, so that mid-year they may say we have some more available. But lots of times what happens is that just gets rolled over into the next year. And
So
that, yeah,
Oh, sorry.
no, that's okay.
So for 2022, are we spending any of this money on things, pardon me, other than the roads?
Nope,
Like
it is all,
buildings or
Nope.
toilets or anything for the
it's all
employees?
the roads.
Well, that's the roads, right? But like
maintenance part.
Hiawatha could be restrooms for the hub. So we got to make sure,
Hiawatha and
because when you
roads.
say PPRTA, there's different pots. And it could be that we take some of the money from this to build the sidewalk on Ruxton. So that's part of a mobility issue in doing it. So I think.
I
we
was
have
just
to-
talking about the maintenance
Yeah,
portion.
so it just depends on what comes in and what pot it comes in from.
Okay, so my overall concern, my overall issue is that I wanted to see more roads getting improved in 2022. And it sounds like the answer is, if we do that, we're missing out on what we would get if we're willing to wait for this other art, whatever, that money.
Yeah, that is
Yeah.
exactly my point.
I
that-
see.
that this is a wonderful funding source for the city.
Okay, I just didn't know if we could ask them for more, but apparently not.
Julie, if I could add on to that, the PPRTA, the plans reach out well beyond 1 year. Some of those, I mean, it's a 3 or 5 year plan, and they have a list of, high priority items, things that they expect to get done within, say, a year, near term. And then there's the other things, and as one thing gets done, the next thing sort of bubbles up and they attack that. So, and that philosophy is applied to the way we go after budgeting for the city of Manitou. Now, Jeff Jones typically, he presents his ideas, what he wants or, for funding, and he has to defend that. So it's not a real, I wouldn't say it's a slam dunk or a simple process. We have to show what we're going to spend the money on, and then they cut it loose. But it's pretty favorable. I think Jeff does a good job of explaining why we need the money, and it's within the guidelines of what it's used for. So it's predictable, and so we'll expect to be getting that money 3, 4, 5 years from now.
But they always tell us how much is available, and then we figure out what we're going to do with what they say we can get.
Well, I'm sorry, yeah, there's limits. Yeah, it's not an empty, a bottomless
Yeah.
cup of coffee or something, bottomless source of funding.
Oh, that's helpful. My next thing on here, and I'm almost done, is I'd like to know a little more about the pilot project for the reservation system. Do we definitely have money set aside for that? Is that a sure thing, or could that money be siphoned off for something different?
This is a
Because I
question for
consider
Roy.
that fairly urgent.
So, yes, I've been talking with a company that Breckenridge uses for their trail system. I'm going to present that next Tuesday, but it's going to be easy to implement. Basically, they just charge a fee per reservation, so we don't have to worry about any other costs on our end. And we get access to a website that allows us to put in the information we want for our website, and we have control over it.
So we don't have to budget any money for our website or any part of that?
Correct. The only thing there will be a slight cost per year. I'm still working on those numbers. I'll have them by next week. For the data, for the website use, there's a little bit of an internet type thing, a web fee, but otherwise they just charge per reservation an amount. And then the only other thing we'll have to do to make it work is we're going to have an attendant up there to make sure that they're securing spots so that people don't take them from others. So that will be a cost to us, but that will have to come out of the payroll to manage that bar lot as a pilot and see how that goes.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
That completes my list.
Thank you.
Thank you. So,
Thank-
it sounds like most things are going to happen anyway, or we've been guaranteed that they will happen, so I'm comfortable with that.
Okay, great.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. Judith?
Thank you, Becca, for putting this together. I really appreciate that. I just wanted to revisit item number 4 one more time, and that's the phone number. I want to echo what Counselor Bremner and Counselor Wolf have said. It is a really pretty awful experience to call that number, and I just wanted to make sure that when we do give you direction, we're giving you the right direction, because it's my understanding that council wasn't asking to take dispatch in-house again, but what I heard the direction is we really want to have a dedicated phone number and a human being answering it. So is that, it was my understanding of that item. So, and I really think it's pretty important. And
During
anyway, so I just
regular-
want to make sure that we're real clear about what kind of direction we're giving staff with
Exactly.
regards to what it would take to make that happen. And I don't know if it could be a 24/7 thing, maybe not, but we could certainly start with a pilot and see how it works.
Would it be most important for during regular hours? Because there really isn't very much in the way
Yeah.
of city services outside of regular hours, except for the emergency type issues.
Well, I would think so, but
Or parking, is there parking enforcement after hours? If someone's parked and you're blocking your driveway, what are you supposed to do?
That's a good
Do
question.
you call 911? I don't know.
Yeah, you would call dispatch, and then they would, once you call dispatch and say somebody's parked, they would notify our police department and go from there. Now, we do have a parking hotline that you can call during office hours and on weekends, and they will address but it's not at 11 o'clock at night. It is during the parking business hours, so.
So when you say
otherwise-
call dispatch, does that mean call 911?
No, that's
Oh, the phone number that they never answer?
yes.
That's useless. Ever tried it, Denise? Please try it. So I want you to see what it's like. It's hard to explain.
So I just wanted some clarity on, is that what council is directing you to do? Because I really think it needs to be looked at fairly quickly.
Okay, thank you. Natalie?
Yeah, I feel like, can we talk about this in January too? Because I feel like I have a lot of questions about what we're directing staff to do, and I don't think I don't know that they have the information. I don't feel like I have enough of an idea of what this is too. Does that make sense? I mean, I don't know. I don't, like, I want to kind of go through like a list of like, why are people calling this number? Do we want it at night or during the day? What are we asking? I mean, do we just, I'm kind of,
This phone number is printed on every police officer's business card. When they give it to you, they say, call this number. And
no,
don't
I
think
understand that. I'm like, what, but I mean, in terms of what we're asking
Oh.
staff to research, I feel like it's pretty vague still.
Can I jump in? Because
Yeah, you
what
go
I
ahead,
meant to
Julie.
say in my memo here was, I just wanted to know, I just expected an answer to say, it's going to be, $20 an hour times 24 hours a day to pay someone to answer the phone, and it's going to be $50 or $150 a month to pay the phone bill, not $1.5 million. So that's all I need. I don't want data. I don't want to spend 3 years collecting why do people call, because no one's calling. No one would call, because unless you're new, you know it's useless. So that data is useless. You'd have to do data. If you want data, you'd have to interview everybody in town and say, have you ever called this number, and did you call it more than once, or did you decide you're not doing that anymore? So I don't want data. I just want to know the price, because this is a budget discussion. And I didn't make it very clear in my memo.
So are you talking about the phone number, the main phone line to City Hall during the day? Is that the
I'm
number?
talking about that 578 number. What the heck is it? Thank you.
So it is after hours.
So that would be a different phone number. If it's during the day, you can call City Hall.
Steve, your comment?
Yeah, I'd just like to say that we don't have to necessarily have an operator answering the phone, because I know that that gets probably pretty detailed, because all kinds of different people are calling in. I'm not against having a system where you dial in, it says push 1 for this, push 2 for that, that kind of thing, so that you get connected to the proper agency or person. However, the way that phone works now, it has all these whole list of things that are not relevant to anybody. Like, are you trying to register a weapon, or all these different things that you don't even want to do? So that's my issue with that, the way that phone system's set up right now. It's more or less, it's for the county or something. It's not for Manitou Springs. The list of things is not relevant to people calling in for Manitou Springs. That's my issue.
I think that provides some good detail there, Steve. It tells you what we don't want, okay? And a lot of times that's important. Mr. Shada.
I think I'd sent a pretty exhaustive memo showing every place that the city had done this, okay? And it seems like to me what the tasks that staff ought to be doing is looking at that list, thinking through daylight hours, after hours, how in the world do you get service from this city, okay? And to me, I think what echo what's been said earlier is 390-5555 is not appropriate for the city of Manitou Springs, okay? All right? There is nothing on that number that tells you that there is a service for Manitou Springs on there, okay? And I think I pretty clearly outlined that, okay? Really clearly outlined it. In fact, I think I even transcribed every step of the way so you could see that, so you wouldn't even have to call it yourself, okay? So it seems like to me, staff ought to be figuring out how in the world is a citizen in Manitou supposed to navigate getting services during hours, after hours. What does that look like? Is it a web page that gives you a set of instructions that say, you know what, go down here. If you have a water leak, okay, and it's like volumes of water, and it's 1 in the morning, then maybe you have to call 390-5555. And then in parentheses, I think it ought to say, heads up, you have to wade through 9 menu items asking whether you want to register a gun, okay? Whether you want to visit a prisoner, okay? All of this stuff that's in there, okay? And in reality, the only way to navigate through that thing is do nothing. Do nothing, okay? Because if you touch any of those numbers, okay, you will get sent to all these goofy places. I've tried them, okay? All right? I dare you. I mean, don't touch the number that says register a gun because you will get sent to another department, okay? And you cannot come back, all right? So it seems like to me we need somebody to look at all our services day and night, figure out how you're going to navigate this, okay? And at least right now document what is the expectations of somebody. Then it seems like the next step is, once we look at that list in that decision tree, to go, is this really what we want? Okay? Is this really what we want? You know, our citizens to go through this. And then I think, like Steve says, we can navigate this with a integrated voice response system, okay? Maybe some of that ends up over, but I think El Paso County can also provide it so that, because if you wait long enough, okay, you get supposedly queued, okay, as a non-911 call to El Paso County Dispatch. And it seems like our own VRU system, if that's where you end up getting dumped in, then you ought to be dumped in there saying, you know, please hold for the next thing. But you shouldn't have to hear, do you want to register a gun? Do you want to talk to a prisoner? Do you want to talk to the City of Fountain's planning department or something? I mean, there's all of these options on there that have nothing to do with Manitou Springs. So it seems like that ought to be where we start, is figure out city services, how in the world do you navigate this, okay? And what's the expectation, all right? Because some of this stuff, it seems like to me, ought to be going to certain people's voicemail boxes and things like that, okay? Some of this stuff is urgent stuff that you really need to have somebody come out, okay? And I think we as council forget that, you know what, sometimes when we have these urgent things, we tend to have a little Rolodex of people who we know to contact almost directly, okay? But the public does not have this, okay? The public doesn't know how to navigate this. The public doesn't know that, you know what, chances are if you call Denise's cell phone number, okay, she'll practically answer it at 2 in the morning, okay? But I don't think that's what we want people doing. Thank you.
Okay. And John, just to kind of follow up, it sounds to me like what you're proposing is not a real expensive proposal. I think we're talking about something simple, relatively simple, easy to use, and we're not going to reinvent the wheel. There must be systems out there. Other people have had this problem and solved it. So it would seem to me like this is a solvable problem, and it could be solved for not a huge amount of money.
I think the first step is analysis, okay? I think we've documented the problem. I think the second is it's not working. I think the second thing is staff needs to take a hold of this thing and analyze this and say, how would you navigate this? How does this work right now? Okay? I documented in that email, okay, all these places on the city website where 390-5555 exists. Maybe some of these things are changing some of that stuff so that it gets dumped into, let's say, the planning director's, you know, email box because you have a question about planning issues. I don't think you probably ought to be contacting 390-5555 night or day about a planning issue. There was a lot of stuff that's in there that we're just using that number as a catch-all. And it seems like to me we ought to have a 685-1000 number, okay, with a VRU or a human being during the day that at least answers the phone, okay, and navigates it as essentially a second thing. But the analysis step is somehow or another, that needs to happen, okay?
John,
Thank you.
okay, Judith?
Well, the last thing that I want to say is I think solving this particular issue would go so far to increase the residents' satisfaction with having to deal with this. So I hear stories all the time from my neighbors who've used this and said, what is it? So I just think that it's something that, low cost. I think it would be relatively easy to put in place, and I'll bet you're going to get a lot of really, really, really positive feedback from the citizens of Manitou.
Okay, thank you. I guess my thought on this, to kind of follow along, if we can go through analysis, figure the problem out, look for a very simple solution, and certainly I think there's something out there, and then implement it, say, initially first during business hours, and then at least have a number of people call and leave a message after hours. Maybe a city employee carries an emergency cell phone or something for the after hours or on weekends. Maybe we expand it to the after hours. But the pilot, I guess, if we could do it during business hours, that'd be a step forward. We'd kind of work the bugs out as we go. So maybe do this in several phases, and within a year have something that's fairly robust, fairly simple, and pleasing to the public.
Do we need to budget for it? I mean, I think we should just take a stab at some dollar amount here so that we have that set aside.
Denise, do you want to respond to that, or looked like you were reaching for your mic? I'm sorry.
Oh, no,
Didn't
I
even-
can respond, I think let's wait and get all the data, and that email that Counselor Shada is talking about was sent on July 27th, and there was a response from Alex on that, but we will, we'll go back and look at this and come back. It will be part of an amended budget saying we need this amount, but let us do some research on it.
Okay, and just remind me, it seems like I was overhearing a conversation at PPACG meeting not too long ago, and somebody was talking about this kind of a problem. I think maybe it was Don Wilson from Monument. So I could see if they've had this problem and how they've solved it. So I'll take an action to contact some of the PPACG people and see if they've had this problem. And maybe we figure out a simple solution, a cheap solution.
Well, it's not rocket science. I mean, every city, every municipality has to have people calling in to request services. So I don't think it's going to cost $1 million or $1.5 million, whatever it is. It's not going to, it's been done. We've been doing it for the last 100 years, ever since there were telephones.
That's a good point, Steve.
So
You're nobody's going to do. Okay. Great. Some good points here. Yeah.
Are we also going to talk about Judith's email about the sustainability professional, either as a consultant or employee or whatever?
Well, okay, Judith, I
I-
saw it today briefly, but if you'd like
Yeah,
to perhaps
that-
talk.
So the contracted sustainability coordinator, Conrad Schlabram, is putting together a cost-benefit analysis, looking at, should the city or should it not, have a sustainability coordinator? And I'm not just talking about environmental sustainability, I'm talking about safety, and I'm talking about, economic vitality. I mean, we had a meeting today, and we were talking about things like, do we have a evacuation plan? Do we have a fire and flood evacuation plan? These are things that, that a sustainability coordinator is gonna, so, but I missed the deadline, and also, that report isn't done yet, and I just wanted to kind of plant the seed for mid-year, because that report will be done shortly, within a couple months, I think, and I think we need that data for council to say yes or no. But, anyway, so I just wanted to plant that seed for a possible mid-year or so amended budget, and kind of just plant that seed.
And be sure that he talks to Karen Burchell. That's her thing, her specialty.
So
So
Okay.
just-
Those
so
evacuation
not-
plans
so-
and all
So
that
not
stuff.
this, not for this, for, accepting this budget, but certainly wanted conversation for amending next year's.
Okay.
Right, right now, there's 50,000 has been included in the 2022 budget for sustainability projects. And this can certainly include vetting, adding a new position of sustainability coordinator.
The other thing is the Manitou Springs Community Foundation has expressed an interest to help fund a position. And I don't know any more than the conversation is being had. So I can't say a dollar amount or what that means, but we have some possible other funding sources as well.
Okay, thank you. And Denise? And then John? Well, okay, John, go ahead, and then Denise.
I guess I'd like to speak about the Soda Springs Park issue. Seems like there's a lot of pushback on completing that park. And I guess I'd like to observe that when I was on council, okay, within a week, okay, council had found out that suddenly out of the blue, Mansions Park area in the pavilion was going to be taken down and it was going to be turned into a parking lot for city and fire employees, okay? All right? So sometimes when there is a desire of council, okay, to change direction, okay, I think that council needs to talk about this, okay, and not have all of this smoke and mirrors, okay, of, oh, it's something that Para doesn't want to consider, okay, or it's not in some plan somewhere, okay. Sometimes I think council needs to look at things and say, this is where there needs to be a change in priorities, or this needs to be some emphasis that we need to add onto our plate as capabilities, okay? At the time that council took that stand, I was on that council, we knew that this was not going to provide happiness, okay? Because there were certain people who wanted a parking lot, okay? But I think now we would all be sort of really much poorer if essentially that had been tarmacked, okay? I'm to what? I'm talking about the Soda Springs Park issue that's on Julie's memo, okay, here, of us getting this thing finished, okay? There are phase 2 and phase 3 plans, okay? We have essentially a surplus, okay? These things are not getting any cheaper to do, okay? The plans have largely been drawn out, okay? Not all aspects of that thing, from fountains and every other kind of little bell and whistle, needs to be dealt with. But the park is I think we have seen that on that west end, that is such a wonderful, stellar project in terms of if we can imagine taking at least that green space, okay, and transforming that Harts Scrabble and all this informal parking and whatnot that's occurring in that park, okay, all the way down to the restrooms, okay, which is full of big rocks with weeds and all sorts of stuff just coming up, okay? To me, I think I would really like to see us, okay, take a wag at what it would cost to at least do 80% of that. Delete some of the things out, like fountains and stuff like that, that don't need to be installed right away, okay? But conceptualize, more green sod, okay? All right? Getting rid of those landscaped areas on the east end, okay? Which I complained when the city put them in. People who put those things down always have trouble with that stuff, okay? You put big, huge rocks like that in, and then there are cups and straws and dirt and
Where are you talking
weeds
about?
around the restroom
Oh,
area.
okay.
That area just looks horrible. It just looks horrible. This is a downtown park, okay, in which is the most heavily used park in the city. and we keep acting like we have to be wedded to these crazy phased plans, okay? All right? And to me, I wouldn't mind hiring, if Para doesn't have the bandwidth for it, if the park director doesn't have the bandwidth for it, okay, that we hire somebody, a consultant, and get it done next year, okay? And finish something, okay? We've got this half-done park, and then we're dinking around with essentially an area up on Higginbotham Flats, okay, that for another year is going to be probably full of all sorts of construction debris and all sorts of junk up there, okay? And to me, I just want to bring that back up again because I hear it all the time from people downtown. Nice spaces, okay, that are clean and beautiful and whatnot, okay, also don't require a lot of policing and stuff like that. That park looks terrible, and so it attracts a certain kind of an element to it as well, because we're saying as a city, we don't care about that.
So
Thank you. End of my speech.
just want to mention real
okay.
quick, like, there is $250,000 in the budget for Soda Springs Park. So if city council in January decides that that should be one of their emphasis, we can certainly budget more for that park.
What was the 250 designated for, Becca? I'm confused because I thought you said, oh, we're not going to do phase 2 in 2022 because Para isn't in the mood to be the project manager, they're busy.
Well,
right?
the Parks and Rec director also has some influence on what is done with the park, in addition with Parab. And although, so that's an ongoing discussion. My understanding is the 250 is for the design, because it needs to be redone. Well, I don't know if necessarily redone. It needs to be updated. Because I think when they did the phase 1, they also did some phase 2. I'm not really an expert on that particular park.
So would you be able to give us some numbers on at least the initial projection that was done when we paid for the design to be done? Were there also dollars associated with that at the time?
My understanding is there's $250,000 budgeted for 2022, and then for the 5-year capital improvement plan, there was going to be $800,000 to finish up the park. But that was with the understanding that we'll need to get some grant money for that, because $800,000 would take up quite a bit of the available funds we have for all our capital needs.
So the 250 is designated exclusively
For Soda Springs
for the
Park.
park, and you're thinking we're going to spend $250,000 updating a design?
Once again, we'd have to talk with Skylar specifically what that would be for. He's the one that was in charge of the capital for needs of Soda Springs Park.
So he'd be able to tell us more precisely what it would cost if we go forward without the fountain itself, just so that it looks better? Would he be able to give us some numbers on that?
He might have to reach out to a firm in order to update the design if you're not going to do the fountain. We'd have to probably do an RFP to determine cost.
And I guess maybe then this is one thing that council will have to decide whether that's a priority and how quickly to move forward, because if all we're going to do in 2022 is an updated design, I wouldn't be comfortable with that.
That's my understanding.
Mayor Pro Tem, please.
Yeah, I just wanted to say that historically, and this is just historic, I'm not saying this is what we should do currently, but parks, both Parab and OSAC have leaned heavily on grant dollars. So the project, phase 1 was, what, $350K, I think. So it takes months to put together a grant application. Now, we don't have to. We could take it all out of our reserve and put it against that, but then that's an opportunity cost that we lost if we don't take advantage of grants. So I personally think that when we look at this in association with all of our capital improvements to prioritize, and I've been a huge advocate of parks for years, so I'm thrilled that we've made the progress that we have because it hasn't occurred in many years. So anyway, I just want to say that grants figures into the decision-making process here, because when you get $350K from GOCO, it's kind of a nice chunk of change that you don't have to pay for something.
Right. And council, I don't think I've mentioned this, but Denise and Nancy and I were talking about, typically when a new council takes office, we have a day-long retreat, usually in January. We were thinking like January the 22nd, we'd get together and do some goal setting and some strategic planning, and maybe try to identify some of the things we'd really like to get done in the next 2 years. So with that in mind, I would hope that we could take some of these fairly significant items like Soda Springs Park and Higginbotham Flats, and there's any number of things, and figure out what our priorities are and the best way to approach them and the best way to use the money and maybe match them with funding and so forth. So I'll throw that out. That's a tentative date, and I'll ask you later to think about if that's a good time for you or not. Okay?
I think that's the day of the fruitcake toss. Is that correct, Leslie? Okay. I don't know if that impacts anybody. It doesn't impact me. I just thought I would throw that out there.
Okay, fruitcake toss, okay. Is it January the 22nd, it's a Saturday, so it'd be like we did before, a day long, and I'm not sure where we'd have it, if it would be at the Garden of the Gods Trading Post or somewhere else, but something like
Is
that.
that date set in stone?
I'm sorry?
Is that date set in stone?
No, it's not. No, it's, I was gonna propose it and then see what people,
I'm supposed to be out of state that weekend.
okay, well, perhaps we can find another date then. Okay, Denise?
Two quick things. I just did want to mention that on our website, there's the Soda Springs Park master plan, and Phase 2 is $285,229.07. I was trying to find an email from Skylar, which went into a lot of detail of what they were doing this year. I can't find it. I would have forwarded on, but we will get that from Skylar and forward it as you guys talk about what you want to spend your money on next year, just so you can look at it. But there's a total master plan of Soda Springs Park and what happens on Phase 1, Phase 2, and what is to take place at this point. That doesn't mean that has to happen. That is the master plan that was put in place at one time. So that is the thing. And then I did want to mention regarding the sustainability coordinator, that was the plan. I think when you met with Skylar, you guys talked about that at mid-year, that's when it would come back. Really look and find what the job description is, what the total, what would be the purpose, what would be the outcomes, et cetera, as we go forward. So that was planned at mid-year.
And I do specifically remember that Skylar said that he did want to see about updating the plan by reaching out to the community to make sure that what's in the plan is what the community wants. He felt that was very important, not to just forge ahead with it, but to do an outreach.
Thank you. Julie?
So Denise, what you just said about Skylar said for Phase 2, it'll be $285,000 to do Phase 2. Did I hear that right?
That is what it shows on the website. Now,
that-
that's a 2007 plan, and I think that's why Skylar is wanting to do some outreach. And I don't want to speak out of turn. I know Skylar did mention this at one time, and we probably need him here to make sure we do all the details and all the questions are answered correctly. But
Okay,
that
but-
was a 2007.
Okay, but here's where I'm confused. I thought what I'm hearing is, we've already got $250,000 set aside in the budget right now for Soda Springs Park. We weren't going to do anything with it other than maybe updating the plans. We don't want to physically implement anything in 2022. We don't really know what it would cost to do Phase 2, but Skylar's already told us it's $285,000. So if we already,
Julie, that's why I said I think we need to take a step and wait for Skylar to address, because we have a 2007 that's on the website. Or, no, I think it's 2017? Okay, thank you.
okay, so this
So-
is a 2017 number.
And so
It's
let's.
not Skylar's updated number. Do I understand that right, the 285?
I think Can we take a step and wait for Skylar to answer all the questions? I just want to make sure that we have accurate information and that I'm not giving inaccurate information or Becca is not giving inaccurate information of exactly what the plan is for that 250,000. So we can get that to all of you. We can make sure that we get that in an email so that you have a clear understanding of what that is and what the plan is and where we're moving forward.
Right, thank you. Judith?
I guess what I would like to hear is there consensus from council that we do want to make this a priority, that some action will be taken to improve Soda Springs Park in 2022? That we don't have that number right now in front of us, but that it is a priority of this council to move forward, prior to having a retreat, and just say it out loud now. Yes, we want to do that, and just so that staff knows that that's something that is a priority for the city. Is that
I think it's a good idea to go around and see. I just want to put in a pitch too, is that, that in a town has looked so lousy for so long, and it's about to look quite lovely once we get all the construction out of there. And to have, all this nice new streetscape and lighting underground, utilities, and then to have that crappy looking park. I mean, we're supposedly a tourist town, and this is what we present to people who come to visit. So I just wanted to say I think now is a fabulous time for us to move forward with improving how it looks in 2022, and then we can get into the minutia later as to whether it should be 250 or 285 or what it should be, or who's going to do the fundraising or what have you. But I do think now would be a perfect time to make that look better.
Okay, so Natalie?
I mean, I guess I'm not opposed to it, but I don't like making decisions without, I mean, in January, we're going to lay out all the things and all the funding sources, and we're having a session to talk about funding sources, and I don't know if we can't wait a month to announce. Okay, is this okay? Okay. No, I would just like to do it in January when we have all the numbers and all the projects, and just do it as part of a larger conversation instead of picking something out. But I mean, I feel confident it'll make it. I just feel weird doing it. I don't know why we're doing it. Are you afraid we're going to get hit by buses in a month and we won't? Oh, gotcha. Okay. I'm new, so this is the first time, and so I was like, oh, let's do this.
This was brought up 2 years ago. Okay, that's why, Natalie.
Okay. Well, I would also be inclined to wait till we do strategic planning in January. We've got a lot of projects. Yeah, the Soda Springs Park seems to me like it should be a priority. There are a lot of things that there are different groups in town. They have different priorities. This, to me, becomes one of the problems of Manitou, is that everybody wants everything, and everybody wants a little bit different split of something. We end up going in different directions. We don't have the resolve or the continuity to get a few things done properly. I think if we were to look at everything we want to get done in the city in 2 years, we would realize we have about 10 years worth of work. I mean, it's just, there's a lot, and I appreciate it. And I'm frustrated too when I go down to the park and say, this could be better. Or a lot of places in town, this could be better. But I think the only way we're going to get there is by sitting down and methodically figuring out, this is how we're going to tackle a problem, get it done, be proud of it, get the community behind us, and let them see that we can be victorious. And we'll move on to the next project. And some of those can be sequenced. So while one's actually under construction with concrete being poured, the next can be certainly in a planning phase. And one, perhaps the next one, maybe we'll be planning the funding. So, I really think there's a lot of opportunity we have. The city has never had as much money as we have at this time. We have an unknown opportunity with upcoming grants and matches and infrastructure, maybe. I won't count that until we see it. But we could do a heck of a lot in the next 2 years, I think. But we really need to stay focused. For that reason, I would you know, while I'm sympathetic, John, for instance, your comments, I'm sympathetic to that. I still want to have you know, a planning session and go through this in detail. And realistically, I don't think we can get it done in one day, but I think we could really begin to get a process going. So that's my thought there.
I would also prefer to do it in context of everything as opposed to doing it tonight.
But where we're at, to me, it sounds, Becca, like we have a pretty good safety net for Soda Springs Park, so that we can anticipate not just drawing plans or ranking paper again, but we could get some things done. Does that
Right,
seem?
there is money in this budget.
Okay,
You
so,
might want to put in more, but we have a start.
okay, so people could be running barefoot through fresh grass maybe, or something like that this time next year. Well, yeah, maybe more money. Well, John,
Something on the, about January, it's somewhat tangential, but since
Well, okay,
we're
go
going to
ahead.
kick this over to January.
well, yeah,
And maybe this isn't a great idea, but I want to throw it out there. It just occurs to me, because that's such a precious day whenever we do it, to have a whole day to just talk about these things. And it would be helpful, at least with respect to the Soda Springs Park issue, which is just one of a million things we'll be talking about, to have Skylar there. Because otherwise, it sounds like there'll be at least something we forget to ask in advance that comes up that's important. But I don't want to just sit there listening to 8 hours of lectures from all these department heads where you can't even ask questions, and then you go home and your brain's so full and it all is empty by the next day. So I want to see if we can come up with a format where, and maybe it's even just available by phone consultation, and he doesn't have to physically be sitting in the room with us. But I'd like to have some of the department heads available should we have questions that come up. But I don't want to invite a whole day of being lectured to.
yeah, I can sympathize with that. Yeah, I guess my thought is that the retreat would be something similar to what we did in January of 2020. It would basically be council and staff, Denise and Roy, and maybe a facilitator, probably not much more than that. I wouldn't anticipate we'd have department heads in there. I think really this would be a time when council would say, this is what we feel passionate about. This would be largely a qualitative day. These are the things we want to work on. And that sort of begets more detailed questions. So then I think there's another phase that comes in, and we have to get details, and that probably would be the time to pull in department heads. But I guess I guess I'd like to emphasize that I don't think this single day is going to solve all the problems. It's going to maybe be a start. Sorry, Nancy.
I would like to suggest that we actually do real strategic planning, by which I mean that we establish a vision, a council vision, which for various good reasons we weren't able to do when this council was new, and that we establish goals and a framework by which to make these sorts of decisions, as opposed to just throwing things out and seeing what sticks. I think a framework by which to prioritize is very important. So I would like that's kind of what I would like to see happen. I think it would be much more useful and cut down and efficient ultimately. So
What about the framework we had last time where we all voted on the priorities that were put on the board, 1, 2, 3, and we added it up, and that way we were able to determine where everyone was with their priorities? Is that not a good framework?
I'd find that we continue to come back to this sort of a discussion whereby just people throw things out and it's not established in a context of the entire budget and the entire vision for the city. I think I would like to see us come up with a vision, a council level, high-level vision for the city. And we did talk about that this summer when that was one of the outcomes that we wanted, if memory serves me. So that's Nancy's desire. I know I'm one of 7, but that would be my recommendation.
Okay, thank you. Mr. Shada?
Well, I can defer this discussion till January, but no, I do not want to do a repeat of 2020 January, okay? That was not satisfactory to me to have somebody come down from Evergreen, okay, and fool around with charts and stuff like that we took months to get a hold of and things like that. I think this council needs to do some, like Nancy says, some strategic planning, okay, without all sorts of other sort of kind of goofy little agendas glued on to the side of these things, okay, all right, and do some serious strategic planning, okay, some serious strategic planning, not team building, okay, not all this other stuff that we've been through, okay? I think we need to just cut to the chase and get down to work, okay? All right? We don't need help with outside consultants. We don't need to figure out how to collectively create a peanut butter sandwich together, okay? All right? We're all adults, okay? And so I think if we will do this serious stuff, I will stop harping on Soda Springs Park, okay, and let the priorities fall out if we will decide to do that. But no, I'm not going to sign up for another January 2020 thing, okay? That was not a great day, all right? Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Anything else?
But can we talk about that? Because I think that makes a huge difference on how the day unfolds. I would feel much better without a facilitator. I find that to be a distraction. I don't want to talk about my childhood. I don't want to talk about peanut butter and all this other crap. And I don't think we need a facilitator. We work things out for the last 2 years. There's no reason we can't work something out just because it's a Saturday. But if we have somebody, it better be somebody a hell of a lot different from what we've had in the past. And I'd like to know what the agenda is, and I don't want to waste time with this other team building, whatever they want to call it.
Okay, yeah. Nancy?
And I'm a strong supporter of a facilitator, and here's why. I don't think it's fair to put this on, or fair or workable to put this on John to facilitate. He needs to participate, not facilitate a meeting. I don't think that Denise is the appropriate person to facilitate. So I think we need a strong facilitator who's skilled at strategic planning. And I don't think we have those skill sets in this council. So I think, again, for efficiency's sake and to make sure that we stay on topic, it would be very helpful to have a good facilitator. I've seen too many meetings go off and not be productive because you didn't have a good facilitator. But I agree, the agenda needs to be defined and put out ahead of time.
And last time it wasn't put out ahead of time. Last time we found out once we got there what we're going to be doing. So yes, it has to be put out ahead of time. And I've been to now several of these, and none of them have been productive so far. And they've all had facilitators.
Okay, thinking out loud a little bit on this, I was thinking on this just a little bit today. And I remembered when I was working, we had a facilitator who did something like this. It was, in a sense, it was sort of like team building, but and this is a group of engineers. This was 80 or 90 engineers. And I remember the guy, he said at the day, he said, you don't find this kind of population in nature. So he was sort of left-handedly telling us we were all freaks. And he was sort of right, but it was really kind of, it was more of a system engineering approach. It was a project management. And he walked us through getting things done. And there wasn't a whole lot of hugging, or we didn't sing Kumbaya. They gave us 15 minutes for lunch, and we got a bunch of stuff done in 2 days. I did think that was kind of neat. Everybody liked it, I think, that participated. That was a much different, he was a facilitator in a sense, but it was much different. He was a facilitator in the sense that a Marine sergeant is a facilitator, I suppose. I'm wondering if in January, during a work session, it wouldn't make sense for us to talk about the format of how we want to do this. early in the year is a good time to set the goals, but maybe trying to figure out how we make the most out of the day and learn how to do this and interact with each other so we can get our work done, take some of the things we feel passionate about and turn them into concrete and brick and mortar and whatever in a reasonable amount of time. So I guess we could entertain the idea of how do we want to do this meeting. We could talk about that at a work session so that when we get to the Saturday, we spend our time efficiently or with a high probability of success. That's my quick thought. Okay, and John, I mean, you need to dust off your old system engineering book, so bring them out, because you may be standing up at a... No, you do, and you're valuable in that. And I can see where if we all had magic markers and a whiteboard, we could be pretty damn dynamic, okay? I think this crew can do it, okay? Sorry that I rambled so much there, but appreciate your listening. Anything more we want to talk about on budget? Okay, we're gonna be revisiting this, I think, throughout the next 2 years, but I'm really hopeful we can get a lot done. Becca, thank you very much. This has been it's been a marathon for you, I'm sure, but council spent a lot of time on this too, so we appreciate it. But I think we're well prepared, getting better prepared. Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, we've got just a couple things, and then I think we'll take a little break before we go into the executive session. Now it's a good time for council correspondence. Something I would like to, I already mentioned the thing about the Saturday session in January, and maybe that'll move. So it sounds like Julie has a commitment on the 22nd, so let's entertain days that might work. Okay, we'd take a Saturday, be a full day. So we'd have that. I also wanted to ask about well, we started off, we were called a moratorium because the changes to the building, the zoning change. I believe Jeff Parker sent us a draft of an emergency ordinance. Do we want to entertain that idea? Do we want to refer this to the Planning Commission? Does council want to act on it as a non-emergency ordinance? So I guess I'd like to get a little bit of a feel just real quickly. This really isn't an agenda item, so we can't spend a whole lot of time on it, but I would like to get a sense of how we want to handle it. If it is handled as an emergency ordinance, it would have to pass unanimously. In my mind, and I've tried to look at the facts and what's actually going on with some of the properties around town, I don't see that this necessarily is what I would consider an emergency. So I personally feel that if we were going to make an ordinance change, we would go through the normal steps. But I'd like to hear what council has to say. So, Mr. Shada.
I would think we would go through the normal steps because I think it's important to at least have a public hearing, okay? Even if these changes are just, shall we say, temporal, because they might get changed when the final zoning thing happens. So, no, I think I would resist an emergency session as well.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you. And would you first refer this to the Planning Commission, or would you just? Right. So you'd send it to planning, John? Okay, great, thank you. Natalie?
Same, yes.
To planning?
To send to planning, yes.
Okay.
I'd
Judith?
send it to planning.
Planning? Nancy?
I would either send it to planning or not do it at all at this point.
Cool. Okay, thank you.
I would send it to planning, and I would ask them specifically to look at it, because to me, to increase the setback from 5 to 10 feet is such a nominal tiny little nothing thing, that if they're going to go ahead and implement even a temporary change, maybe they can be a bit more aggressive.
Okay, thank you. Steve?
Yeah, I'm in favor of sending it to planning and generally just slowing it down. I don't see it as an emergency. I think it should be deliberated by planning, and we should follow through on their recommendation.
Thank you very much. Well, it looks like we have, and I would also tend to go with planning and the normal two-step first reading, or first hearing, or first reading, second reading procedure. So I would be inclined to go that way. So it looks like the support here is to go in that direction. Denise, I'm sorry, you had.
No, I just want to do time frame. I don't know if we can get on next week's planning commission. Larry is out right now, so I'm not sure. So it may be January, then February, because it's a first and second reading, and then be brought back here in the end of your second meeting in February is what we're looking at. So that would be the time frame as we move forward, unless if we can get on next week's.
Okay, good, thank you, that's helpful. Okay, so it would seem to me then that council's direction to staff would be to refer this to planning as soon as possible, yeah. Okay, all right, thanks, that's all I've got. Who else has something? I guess there's nothing. In that case, let's go to the city administrator's report. Mr. Cheney?
The only thing to report tonight is that next week, if the weather holds, we're going to restripe around Memorial and the shuttle stop area with the crosswalk. And then Ruxton, the area up Ruxton, around that curb. And then we'll go from there on rear diagonal parking, weather permitting. So, thank you.
Great, thank you. Denise?
All of you have an updated policies and procedures over the last year, so you can put it in your orientation binder. It's the latest and greatest as we move forward, so I just want to make sure you have that. And then I will, again, see when we can get this on planning. I don't want a commitment for next week. I've got to check with Planning Commission and notifications, et cetera, but if not, it will be January.
Okay, great, thank you. All right, so I will go ahead and we'll adjourn from the work session, which requires no formal action, and I will convene a special meeting of Manitou Springs City Council. I will now call the special meeting to order with the intent, yeah, go ahead,
Can
Julie.
we have a bathroom break first?
Yeah, I'm sorry, I was just gonna,
Oh,
let's go ahead and vote to do the executive session, then that'll give people time to set up and we can take a break. So
Thanks.
we'll be real quick here. So I call this special meeting to order. November 30th, 2021, Manitou Springs City Council. The intent of the purpose of having the special meeting is to consider going into an executive session for 2 items. We'll go ahead and read those. I have to read them sooner or later. The first executive session would be an executive session to consider a matter required to be kept confidential by federal or state laws, specifically CRS 29-2-106, parentheses 4, C2, concerning city sales taxes. And then the second item is an executive session to discuss a personnel matter regarding an employee pursuant to 5.1A of the Manitou Springs Municipal Charter. The executive session concerns the annual performance review of the city administrator. That's part of the agenda, so if we could have a motion to approve the agenda.
So moved.
Motion is second, all in favor say aye. Aye, okay. Now I'd like to seek a motion for to go into executive session for the reasons I stated. Do we have a motion? We have a motion. We have a second. We have a motion, a second. All in favor say aye. Aye. Great, thank you. Okay, so we'll go into executive session. We'll need a few minutes to set up. In the meantime, let's take a break.